the current government put some policy in place that so compounded that poverty rate to the point that many Nigerians went into bigger poverty, that about 70 million was said to have gone into poverty within just 2 years of the government policy. So because of that, you can't, it's quite difficult to say, are we better than well? No, we are, it's becoming a little bit hard.
Okay.
Although even in this period of hardness, but some people are still becoming billionaires overnight.
How are they doing
because
it?
Of what? They recognize the opportunity in the government policies that they can take advantage. For instance, people who invested in government bonds when Tinubu came to power are benefiting from it. People who own banks, have you not seen banks declaring billions, trillions as profit after tax?
Right.
Insurance companies declaring billions and billions after tax.
Mm-hmm.
Some manufacturing companies in Nigeria are billions and billions. There are 10 major manufacturing companies in Nigeria that in the last 8 months check their audited account. Billions of naira they have declared. Is it the Dangote? Is it the Boa? Is it Nextel? Is it just mention the better beverage companies, food and beverage companies, either cement companies, either so they are making money. What about the real estate? People who are in the real estate corridor of Nigeria economy. They're also making money. All that, just have few of them at that point. And because of the system of economy that is practiced, it is only the owner of the business that take all the profit of the business. You that is working for him, he will make the company 2 billion today. It is your salary he will give you. And that salary will can't take you to anywhere. So that's what is happening. So the millionaires are keep making money, whereas ordinary workers are just backing up with the allowance that they are getting. Then so the other question that is asked, if you could quickly let me and
right. You said something earlier about foreign direct investment, because I had asked you if this job loss is going to affect, investments in Nigeria. But you are saying that the foreign direct investments are usually targeted at, the agricultural sector, the oil and gas, ICT, right? And also energy. So I was asking that, is it that the manufacturing sector is not that attractive for, foreign investments, or what?
What is scaring them is 2 things. Is ethics, the ethics evaluation. Because when a foreign direct investor come and invest money for a period of in the manufacturing sector, they not quickly take his money in 5 years, in 10 years. So by the time he wants to take his money, he wants to be seeing the money doubling. So in a situation whereby somebody brought in $10 million into Nigeria economy, and when he's going back with $3 million. What do you think will happen to him? Because of the valuation. Another thing that, the one that scares them most is the cost of energy in Nigeria. Electricity, you have to provide everything for yourself. If you open a plant now, alternative sources, and alternative sources are now two in Nigeria: solar and generator. Alternative source is now 2: solar and generator. If the main source doesn't come, that means the NEPA light doesn't come, rely on generator in the daytime. In the night, you rely on what? Solar in the night. But when you're not producing, you rely on solar for all technical lighting systems. Then when the production comes, you put on your what? The generator. That's what we have now: 2 alternative sources, generator and solar. Meanwhile, the main source is supposed to be our real source of energy, the NEPA light, we don't see. And that is just what is scaring investors coming to Nigeria to invest in critical areas like manufacturing sector. Another thing that we can add is the material, the raw material they will use to produce is we don't have it here at secondary level.
Okay.
It is so raw, and you have to import the secondary level raw material to do some of their production.
Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification, Adefolari. Now, let us digress a little bit to what the presidency actually said yesterday, where it said, borrowing is not a sin, probably responding to criticisms coming from different, quarters, looking at the achievements that the president actually highlighted in the course of his second-year anniversary speech. And, economists like you have over time said that borrowing is not out of place, that even global or world economies actually borrow monies, right? So what exactly, or how best would you describe the borrowing status of Nigeria and how well these monies have been utilized?
This of borrowing in the context of Nigeria is borrowing and wasting the money. And that's the thing of Nigeria borrowing. We borrow money and we waste it. We borrow money, we can't give account for it. We borrow for A, we end up using money for B. That's what is happening in Nigeria. So it's quite very sad that even though I appreciate that the president and government said borrowing is a sin, but we also let them know that borrowing is a sin when it is not used for what it's actually meant for. But when borrowing is now wasted through corruption, through lapses, two ways whereby you don't have anything to point to the borrowing. So it's a sin when you borrow and you don't use that money for what it's meant for. So you must let them know that borrowing, in your own understanding, is not a sin. But borrowing in the sense and understanding of every ordinary Nigeria, it's a sin when it is not used for what it's meant for. And when we borrow money and we cannot see what that money is meant for, it's a sin on the part of the government. So we must let them understand that. So on the aspect of economic technicality about borrowing, actually borrowing is very, very valuable. It's something that everybody, even you and I, borrow.
Right.
But when we borrow, what do we use that money for? We use it for something that can either bring back the money, we give it back to the person that we borrowed for, or we use it for something that will sustain us for a period of time.
Right.
But in Nigerian case, we don't borrow money to sustain the economy. We borrow money to waste the economy. And that's the level we have found ourselves. We borrow money to waste. We don't borrow money to sustain or to grow the economy. Forget all the jargon within the technicality of all the IMF and World Bank. Usually in Nigerian context is that when we borrow, we waste it. And it's not what we borrow. And they waste it in a very luxurious way.
Okay.
And that's how you need to tell the government that borrowing is a sin on your part when we cannot see what you have used the money for. Or when you borrow and that thing you say you want to do is not sustainable.
All right, Defalarin Olamilekan, I'll have you hold your thoughts. We'll go pay some bills. When we return, we'll also open the studio lines for, contributions from, the listener on the other side of the radio, and we'll also link up with you again in a short bit.
All right.
This is Eagles Outlook live on Eagles FM 102.3 Abuja. You can be part of the conversation by calling 09073530044 or 09087668888. You can also send a voice note or a message to the WhatsApp portal number on 0909705 44 and 50. We're looking at 18,000 jobs lost amid economic reforms in Nigeria, the implication of this, and also the borrowing defense by the presidency yesterday that borrowing is not a sin. Let's get your 2 cents on all of this, but that would be after this quick timeout. Do join us again.
Eagles 102.3 Abuja.
Things they happen for our community, eh?
Now back all the money I have spent on this annoying family.
Hey, yeah. That woman own don't finish.
My dear, let's go and greet them, okay?
Join Media Coalition and Awareness to hold trafficking, MICAS, on I Wish I Knew radio drama and program every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Eagles 102.3 FM Abuja. Join us to kick human trafficking out of our society. I Wish I Knew radio drama and program is brought to you by MICAS and funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark.
Eagles 102.3 Abuja.
For advert placement and program sponsorship on Eagles 102.3 FM, please call 080-5919-8658. That is 080-5919-8658 or 081-5791-7278. Again, 081-5791-7278.
No offense to the commercials. It's just that we want to see other audio.
Eagles 102.3.
All right, we're back. Thank you so much for staying with us. And if you are just joining us, this is Eagles FM 102.3 Abuja, your radio experience that you can always count on Anytime, any day, anywhere. Join the conversation live on YouTube and Facebook at Eagles FM Abuja, even as we look at a very topical issue that bothers on Nigeria's economy, and especially concerns coming from the manufacturing sector, that 18,000 jobs are lost amid economic reforms in Nigeria, coupled with the fact that manufacturing, about 767 manufacturing companies had actually shut down operations in 2023. The cost of imported raw materials surged by 118%. And then you look at spending on alternative energy, hitting 1.11 trillion naira, as of last year. But what does that tell you, really? This is somewhat contradicting the highlights of the president's second year anniversary speech, which he delivered last week, Thursday. So what are your thoughts really on this? Would you want to suggest more realistic economic policies and maybe reforms to help change, the tide? 09073530044 or 09087668888. These are the numbers to call. You can send a voice note or a message to the WhatsApp portal number on 0909744 and 50. Right, let's quickly share with you a personal story coming from a factory worker who simply puts her name as Mrs. Nena. According to her, she actually lost her job when the manufacturing company she worked for shut down due to the economic challenges facing the industry, and she had struggled to find new employment and had to rely on her savings to support her family. Now, what does this story tell you? It somewhat highlights, the human impact of the job losses in the manufacturing sector. I actually asked my guest, Adefalarin Alamilekon, who is an economist, that with 18,000 jobs lost, does this mean that the unemployment rate in the country is going to increase, or there's going to be a decline? Because, we've been made to understand over time that there are technicalities surrounding certain issues almost every now and then, and sometimes it makes the whole conversation a bit complex. But we're just hoping that you've been able to get a sense of what is obtainable and the possible implication of this, development. 18,000 jobs lost in the country, last year, 2024. All right, how would you assess or even describe, or how best would you describe the policy and regulatory framework ideas of the President Tinubu-led administration, especially at a time where there is so much competition and the market dynamics, they keep changing almost on a daily basis? I actually asked Adefalarin Olamilekon a question earlier around the borrowing spree or status of Nigeria and whether or not we're still on track. And according to him, borrowing has never been a crime, but in this part of the world, for the lack of better words, and I like to quote him verbatim now, we borrow just to waste. Do you think that is the case, or we are just maybe trying to compound issues more than they are already? All right, Turkey Mihundu says, he is writing us from Nasarawa State, by the way. He says the issue of borrowing has been a big issue because when those in government borrow, they hardly use that money for the purpose it was meant for. And also when they do, they hardly use up to 50% of what, of that money for the purpose. Now, if only the National Assembly, will compel the president to state all the items the money, will be used for, so that the National Assembly can ask the president next time, if it comes to borrow again, to bring evidence to show how the money approved before was used before approving another borrowing. It is unfortunate the National Assembly is in the pocket of the president. Okay, is it really true the National Assembly is in the pocket of the president? It means the president's pocket must be very deep and very big because the National Assembly is no small body. All right, Our message by the way 09073530044 or 09087668888 are the numbers to call. You can still send a voice note or a message to the WhatsApp portal number on 090970544 and 50. How much of a concern is it to you as a citizen? You probably were, directly affected by the job loss we're talking about here, or a relative of yours. But in a long run, how much of a concern is this trend to you? Adefolarin, thank you so much for joining us. All right. Okay, we just missed a call, but you can as well call back. We have less than 4 minutes to wrap things up on the show, so the earlier you call in, the better. In the meantime, let me, engage you a little further, Adefolarin Olamilekan. If truly we're having a very poor policy and regulatory framework, I'm just asking that if truly that is the case, what exactly would be the way out? Because it appears we're in the woods. What would be the way out for you?
Policy framework regulation.
Mr. Adefolarin, is it possible I call you back?
All right.
Yes, let's link up with you again so that we can get sense of the point you're trying to make. And we can actually squeeze in one more call before we wrap things up. So whilst I make efforts to link up with Adefolarin Olamilekan again, because it's important for us to have, clear sense or get clear sense of the point he is trying to make. All right, as far as this issue is concerned. Adefolarin, welcome back.
All right, thank you, man. Thank you.
So back to the question.
So, for me, I think we don't have any issue with our regulatory framework policy. What we have is the full implementation, compliance with these policies, as well as ensuring that these policies are fully implemented to the letter. Or rather, we have issues whereby we don't apply them, we don't implement them, we abandon them midway, we turn them into a reverse policy implementation, and it becomes so political, so ethnic-centric driven to the point that we abandon them. So we now started doing just here and there that we need another policy. We don't have policy problem in Nigeria. We have a lot of laws that guide that we have copied and good lessons from those laws, but because of lack of implementation, we don't get it done. I just mentioned something earlier before you call back.
Right.
Traffic. So bad traffic in Nigeria is a big problem. And that is one way that government can even make more huge revenue from traffic. People who drive against the traffic, one-way driving is now so popular in Abuja that people drive against traffic anyhow. That is just one. Are you saying we have guys how we drive our cars and how we move around, but we disobey it? They are now coming to economic policy of government. Which economic policy that is not good? Who say we cannot reduce poverty to at least 20% in Nigeria? We can do it, but because reducing poverty through policy economy will make a little bit so uncomfortable. The Sasa life in Africa is so much that people want us to come to see Sasa to them or Mama to them. So to reduce poverty is not a big challenge. Rather, instead of pushing the people out of poverty, now.
Adefolarin, if you can hear me, if we have a situation where the inflation is, reducing, is that not also supposed to translate to reduction in poverty?
Definitely, that's how it's supposed to be. But the way we have structured our economy, the way we have structured our political arrangement is not making that to work. For instance, from the level of political appointees, governor, president, how much are they earning? How much life are they living? The problem is not even the salary they are being paid, but right after they leave up, go and check the amount of wealth these guys have accumulated to themselves. And that's why it happens. And those amount of wealth supposed to go around and settle so many issues in the country. So that's why we have issues. For me, it's not about policy, framework, regulation. It is the implementation of it. Right now, federal government is giving us 25,000 to people. But guess what? How many of the population are they going to give that money to? And how many of such money will go into private pockets, particularly our civil about this money out people. So those are the way we have it.
Okay. In a minute, what a more realistic incentive for manufacturers to create jobs and also to stimulate the economy, what would it be if you were to suggest?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Adefolarin? Are you there? Can you hear me? Adefolarin, can you hear me? All right. Time is really not our friend, and we have less than a minute to wrap things up. But I honestly would have loved for him to answer that very question, because I think it is very critical to the topic of discussion this morning. So I'm just going to try to see if I can link up with him again to just answer that particular question. Then we'll wrap things up. Adefolarin, very quickly, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here. This network issue. You know, the weather is like the cloud weather is affecting network service provider.
Right. So I was asking, I mean, in 1 minute, if you can, that if you were to suggest a more realistic incentive, aside tax waivers for manufacturers, to create jobs and also to stimulate the economy, what would it be?
I think first and foremost, let the manufacturing association find a level playing ground on how to apply for mini grid. We have industrial cluster that can apply for mini grid electricity, because if they want to wait for the government, they may not get electricity. Because one of the challenges they're having is the cost of energy. How can it come together like Manufacturing Association of Nigeria? How can it create an industrial hub, manufacturing hub that mini grid electricity are fit for? Because once they reduce the cost of energy, they will have no issue anymore. Then secondly, incentives that government can give to them within the period that they are going to be applying for this mini grid. Can government also give them a license, mini grid license to Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, so that its members can create that electricity generating hub within the area they are and can generate electricity for their members. Because that's the only challenge they have in terms of energy costs, and that would reduce the cost of their expenses. If government can do it for them, give them free license to develop and build a mini grid electricity generation for themselves in a manufacturing hub area, either in Abuja, in Lagos, anywhere they can set it up, and that will go a long way.
Okay. All right, I'm afraid we just have to leave the conversation here now, but it's always a pleasure discussing Nigeria's economy with you, an economist and also lead researcher at Pole Eco Analytics, Adefolarin Olamilekan. Thank you so much. All right, and the conversation continues on YouTube and Facebook. Do also have a playback and also share the video. You might as well want to leave a comment. We'll be very glad to acknowledge your thoughts. I would like to state that the views expressed on the show this morning were not influenced by the station. I am Omohefe Peace Osem.